And today we are going to be looking at how to use data which can be derived from the Smappen system to support franchisees, drive franchisees, encourage franchisees to develop the business. And in addition to all of the other great stuff that Smappen does in terms of territory mapping. So it's new developments, and Lauren's with us today to share all of that knowledge and information with us. So welcome, Lauren, and over to you.
Thank you, Julie. Hi, hello everyone. Thank you for inviting me. Well, this would maybe not be much about Smappen. I'd like to be much more general than that. So it's not specifically about Smappen, but about how you can leverage mapping for something else than just territory mapping. So maybe I'll start sharing my screen and start the presentation. Um, oops, one share. It's oops. No, sorry. Right. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, all good.
So very happy to be with you today. So yeah, today we're going to talk about mapping, but maybe not in the way you're used to. I think you're all familiar with territory mapping, but I'd like to show you today that there are other ways to use mapping. So specifically, we're going to talk about using mapping to help your franchises succeed. So here's what we're going to cover today. So first, I like to share some quick insight on how mapping and data are mainly used by franchisors today. Then we'll look at how you can use that data to understand your network better and get some real deep insight into what's actually happening. So from there, we'll see how you can efficiently use this to assess your franchises and find those specific levers to help them perform better. And we'll also look at the how-to, specifically how you can help them target concrete actions right there on the ground locally. And finally, we'll talk about how to collect the data because to be efficient, you got to have the right data coming in. It's not always that easy. And yeah, feel free to ask questions as we go if you have any. So mapping and data today. So I think you're familiar with mapping. And I think truth is it's almost exclusively used for franchise development. So what most franchisors use mapping for basically four things: looking for the best potential territories, where should I grow, where can I grow, and then sizing those territories. It's vital not to oversize them, and it's also very important not to undersize them. It's also used to assess the potential for new locations, answering the question, is this specific spot a good idea or not? And finally, it's just managing the territories and locations. So that's really the main usage of mapping today for our franchisors. So what kind of data do they use to do that? Well, mainly two types. First is demographics, which in the UK usually comes from the Office of National Statistics Census. So it includes things like income, age, ethnicity, housing, household, employment data, etc. And the second is points of interest. So these are used to locate competitors, specific brands, interesting neighbors, prospects, prescribers, and so on. So basically, these are all external sources, I mean, external to the franchisor, whether we're talking about open data or private database. So, but here's what I don't see very often. Franchisors leveraging their own data. Simply just taking the data you already have and putting it on a map. That's the first step that is already incredibly insightful. So in doing that opens the door to a new use case that has nothing to do with new franchises acquisition. It's about using mapping to help your existing franchises perform better and grow. I think it's really a massive underrated lever. And what I'd like to show you today is how you can put this lever to work for your own network. So the first thing you can do is use data to understand your network better. So there are a few ways to approach this. First, it helps you evaluate the actual trade or catchment area or service area for each franchisee. If you are a brick and mortar business, like a restaurant, we're talking about your catchment area, the zone where you actually attract your customers. If you're a service-based business, we're talking about service area. Now, how do you do that? It's actually quite simple. You map your customers using their postcodes or addresses for each franchisee. Then you determine where, say, 80 or 90% of them are coming from in terms of drive time or driven distance. That is your real-world catchment area for a specific franchisee. Once you have that, you can look at the average across the entire network to define what a typical area looks like. So I think it's a game changer because it helps you assess the potential for the new location because you know their influence area, but it also lets you compare franchisee performance. And here's an interesting takeaway, I think. For catchment area, usually bigger is better because it means that franchisee has a massive pool or a massive influence. But for a service-based business, smaller is often better. If the service area is too big, it means that travel times and operating costs are eating into the franchise's margins. So that's something also I recommend reassessing regularly because it can change over time. For instance, as your brand awareness grows, your typical catchment area will grow along with it. Another thing you can do to understand your network better is identifying or refining your key success factors. I think the mistakes many make is assuming these factors are set in stone. They're not, clearly not. You need to challenge them regularly. So to do that, you should analyze each of your franchisee's catchment or service areas and look at all the relevant data you have to find recurring patterns. That means demographics, of course, but also competitors, specific neighboring brands that are beneficial to have nearby. And there's a tip also. It's vital. It's interesting to look at both your top performers and I'd say your struggling locations. You can learn just as much from both. So your successful franchises will show you which configurations actually work, but your less successful ones, they will show you which patterns may be putting your franchisees at risk. So it's also, you can get also very interesting learnings from them. So, and again, it's not a one-time task. I really recommend to do this regularly because the market changes all the time. So now we can get into the heart of the matter. So how to actually assess your franchises and help them perform better. So the first step is being able to make a truly fair performance assessment. So I'll give you an example, maybe a simple one, but let's say we have franchisee A with a 500K annual turnover, and we have franchisee B with a 600K annual turnover. So if I ask you, who's the better performer? I think it's obvious. On paper, the obvious answer is franchisee B. However, the reality may be exactly the opposite. So in this case, franchisee A is actually your top performer. Why? So even though both territories are roughly the same size geographically, one is in Norwich, one in Coventry, the potential is completely different. So let's say they're in the home renovation business, okay? If we look at the number of houses in each area, one has 130,000 houses, while the other has almost twice that number. So when we look at what I call the performance ratio, simple ratio could be the turnover divided by the potential, we see a massive difference. So yes, franchisee B brings in more total cash, but franchisee A is far more efficient. And in fact, for every 1,000 houses you give to franchisee A, they're able to generate over 50% more value than the franchisee B. So this example is a little bit exaggerated, of course, because you usually try to have similar potential across your different territories. However, the reality is that every territory is different and you will always have variations in terms of potential, and you have to take this into account when you assess the efficiency or the performance of a franchisee. So this ratio is a simple way to look at it, but you can actually break this down even further into penetration rates and average basket size, for instance, to see exactly where that efficiency is coming from. So what's interesting then, to get back to mapping, is visualizing the performance, not just measuring it in a spreadsheet, but actually seeing it on a map. Well, what I really like to look at is the market penetration. So formula is very simple. It's your sales divided by the total potential. So you can calculate this using your turnover or just simply the number of customers, both work. So why is visualizing this so powerful? Because it shows you exactly where the franchisee is already doing well and where they still have untapped potential. So it means that you can stop guessing and start helping that franchisee focus on the specific areas that actually matter, the ones where they can have a real impact. And this is where they can really take action. So by using these maps, they can launch, for instance, hyper-targeted communications campaigns where they know exactly where they can maximize their return on investment. So for example, direct mail, they can target specific neighborhoods, see the exact number of mailboxes in those areas to let them size their print volumes perfectly, so there's no waste. It's also very effective for digital campaigns, so you can target specific postcodes to ensure every penny of your digital marketing spend is actually hitting the right audience. Can also be used for street marketing, for instance, and some franchisors do that too. So you can first identify the areas, like we did with the highest untapped potential, then zoom in and find the closest streets with the busiest spots, and where you can where street marketing will have the maximum impact. It can also be useful to help your franchisees locate and target relevant shops or specific businesses. For instance, if you're in B2C, could be for flyering or setting up cross promotions with local partners. On the other hand, if you're in B2B, you can target specific businesses that can be customers or referrers, and in that case, you can identify the areas with the most potential, and then pull a list of specific prospects or targets and hand it directly to your franchisee. So it takes the guesswork out of the sales day, I'd say. So now to do all of this, you're going to need data. So how can you collect the data? So for service-based businesses, you probably have it already because your franchisees are traveling to the customer to deliver the service. They're already collecting addresses, postcodes, and so on. So the data is probably sitting right there in your CRM or in your billing system somewhere. Probably already have it, or at least your franchisees have it. For brick and mortar businesses, it's a bit more tricky, I'd say. You have to be more intentional. Like you can ask for a postcode, for instance, at the point of booking, or if you have a loyalty program, you can make the postcode a required field, for instance. It's just simple. Can I get your postcode? Can give you the data you need to build this map. And it may seem easy, but maybe it's not always that easy, and you may face some challenges gathering all the data. For instance, very often some franchisees may be reluctant to share their customer data. So gathering everything requires anticipation. it's much more difficult if you didn't choose the right tool from the start, or if you didn't include data sharing clauses in your franchise agreements, for instance. So ideally, it's something you want to anticipate, to build in early. Otherwise, you'll have to retroactively modify how you work. It's a bit more difficult. But there's a very powerful lever I've seen some franchisors use. So it's demonstrating the value of that data. And by the way, this demonstrates your value as a franchisor, because the franchisee is paying royalties and they expect value in return. And I think data is one of the most valuable things you can provide. If you have the data for the whole network, you have market insights and benchmark that a single franchisee could never get on their own. So it really makes sense for them to be part of your network. It's so powerful that I've seen franchisors offer this benchmark only if the franchisee shares their own data first. So it creates a perfect incentive. They get access to the big picture only if they contribute their own piece of the puzzle. I've seen it work pretty well, to be honest. And once you have that, again, you can build a system around it. I think it's not just a one-shot analysis that you have to do, or once a year project. I think it could be a recurring, continuous improvement flywheel. So on a regular basis, with every one of your franchisee, you should be reviewing the map, analyzing the results, and then iterating. So you define the next step, take the next action, and then you follow and you repeat. So the goal here is to make it systematic. I think it's interesting to don't let data just be an afterthought, make it a core part of your operational ritual. And that's where I think it could provide really interesting results. And that's it for me. So do you have any questions?
Right, thank you. Do you want to take the screen share off yours, Lauren, and then we can just go back to the standard. Great,
Yes.
thank you. So yeah, I've got a question in terms of, I've got a question, I'll get in first. So in terms of the data import, if the franchisor has got the CRM system with all of the client data into that CRM system, Lauren, can that just be taken over from the existing system into Smappen?
Yeah, it can be. I mean, all systems have an export feature. You can just export it usually as a CSV or an Excel file, and then import it into the app. So today, if we talk about Smappen, we have a direct connection synchronization with one CRM only. It's HubSpot. Some franchisors use it, but they have a direct connection. It means that they have access to their sales data in real time. But otherwise, you can just import it, export it from your CRM and just import the file. All you need is just in one column somewhere information that the software can use to locate the data, the customers. So it could be just postcode, it's enough, full address, fine.
Great. And everything is already in the system. This is all part of the standard system.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Exactly.
Sorry,
What's interesting when you import this data is maybe not just have the address of the customer. You can add more data, like the total spent amount, for example, is interesting because you can then use it in the software on the map.
So you could almost segment your existing client base in terms of spend, and then that would give you additional information if you wanted to target the high spending clients, etc. You can do that.
It's maybe not about segmentation. It's more about reusing the data you have in your database to put it on the map. Like if you have the total spend for each of your customers, you can then map not just the number of customers, which is a bit different. You can map either the turnover by postcodes, for instance. You can map the average baskets by postcodes to see where people spend more, where people spend less. You can reuse this data to build other metrics and put it on the map.
Right.
You can calculate the penetration rate, for instance, if you have either using just the number of customers, but you can calculate the ratio turnover versus potential and put it on the map.
Okay. Kat, you've got your hand up, and feel free to come off mute, everyone. I'm happy to, everyone join in, take questions, etc.
So do all your clients add in this extra data to get the drill down of all the information, or is it, or is it only some of them, or is it just, is it standard? Does everyone do it?
Does everyone does the import leverage their own data?
Yeah, do they? So obviously when you first started, you said this is, you've got the territory mapping, and this is what you do, and this is the data you can see. And then you said, yeah. And then now if you input the specific data from the CRM systems or whatever, then you get all this detailed information. Do all of your clients do
Not at
that?
all. Not at all. Not at all. Not at all. They should. They should. So some don't have the data or they don't even think about it. I mean, we're trying to educate franchisors about that because I think it's a very powerful lever. But like I said in the introduction, I mean, most franchisors use mapping only for territory mapping. That's all they do, and a few of them use their own data to do this kind of analysis and franchisee help them to support franchises, but very few of them do. Yeah.
Right.
Mash, you had a question?
Yeah, I actually had two, so which sort of occurred to me. Actually, I had three. You nicked the first one, Julie, because that was the question I was going to ask. Does it integrate with existing CRM systems? But I suppose there's two questions, Laurent, that would be interesting. One is, does the franchisor at a higher level have access to all those individual data points from the individual franchisees in terms of their local markets? And secondly, what about GDPR issues in terms of, is the data secure? Is it compliant, and all those sort of things? More of a legal question. I think Kat and Natalia would probably be more experts on that issue than me, but I was just curious about that as well.
Yeah, I'm also very interested to have Natalie's view on I would say, the contractual side. I mean, do they usually anticipate and who's the owner of the data and etc. It would be really interesting to have your point of view on that. So your question was about the second one was GDPR. GDPR, yeah, of course it's compliant with GDPR. Everything is encrypted, and we don't even have access to the data. Only our clients have access to their own data. And the first one, was, does the franchisor have access to all the data?
Yeah.
So yes, today the franchisors are the users, so they import the data into our system. So they, of course, they have access to the data because they implement this data into the system. Then we have very few franchises as direct users. It's mainly franchisors who do the analysis and provide the insight to the franchises.
Brilliant.
I guess it comes back to the point that Lauren made about having the agreements set up correctly in the first place to enable the franchisor, subject to how the operational system works with CRMs and with data, where the data is held, etc. But having the agreement set up to enable the franchisor to use the data. Natalia, Kat?
Yeah, just to jump in on I mean, I think there are two separate questions. There's the question of, who owns the data. And then I think there's a separate question about the GDPR and data protection. And obviously, GDPR and data protection only kicks in if there is any personal data that we're actually talking about. So I think there's often confusion, because as soon as you mention data, people just sort of jump on the data protection point, and that's not always the case. So I think there's a lot that, for the purposes of looking at the business and the opportunities, you potentially don't need any personal data at all, because there's a lot of data that you can work with, which is anonymized and etc. So you can do that. But I think bringing it back to sort of franchisor-franchisee relationship, I would just say it depends on the setup, on each specific franchisor setup. It depends on what data franchisor needs, reasons why, where it comes from. Most franchise agreements would provide for would contain provisions about data sharing between franchisees and franchisor, and then it just making sure that the franchisor and the franchisees are compliant with data protection. You would then need to ensure that it's reflected in the privacy notices, etc., and that the clients are aware about the fact that their data may be shared sort of further up the chain, the reasons why, etc. So yeah, it's understanding. I think the key is understanding what data you need, why you need it, and how it's going to be used. And those would always be my first questions. But I actually have a question to Laurent. And I completely, agree with everything you've said, and I've seen sort of that in operation. How mapping, if used properly, and sort of looking at opportunities and how territories are being used. But I suppose, in order to get the most benefit out of that, you need to have the data. The more data you have, the better, the better your analysis is. So I suppose my observation is it's probably always quite tough and trickier for new franchisors in the market, because at the point when they are sort of looking at products like Smappen and looking at territory mapping, they don't really have much data to go on, so they don't necessarily know how best to create those territories, because they may not yet have the data to analyze to give them that information. Any suggestions on sort of what they can do and how how franchisors do that?
Very good question. It really depends what they want to do. Where they would need as much data as possible is to determine and to find what are their key success factors. Okay, the more locations, the more data you have, the more likely you are to find the relevant key success factors. So it's very true that in the beginning it's quite tricky, and you probably have to make assumptions at the start, doing with what you have. So, but this is for, I would say, the more development part, like how to size and build your new territories. The more data you have, the better. When it comes to analyzing existing locations, just you don't need much data. Just the basic customer data is enough. Even if you have just one location, you can analyze it, see where customers are coming from, see what's your penetration rate around, and define concrete actions to improve turnover for that specific location. You don't need much to do what I've just told about. You don't need much data. Where you need more data is for development and territory sizing. Yeah, for sure, you're right.
So even in a startup situation, and they say the worst case scenario, even if they only had one single outlet unit, company owned operation that was trading, they would have the data from that to put into the system.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Even with one location, at least for this location, just better than nothing. Analyze your customer database just for this specific location. Look, what's your catchment area for this location? How far are people coming from, and what's the social demographics around? And at first, you will just try to replicate, find similar locations, and you take the same assumptions, saying if people usually I don't know, walk 15 minutes or have I would say most of your customers are coming within 15 minutes drive time. You know that for your next location in a similar configuration, you can bet that people will probably drive 15 minutes to come to your place. It's not 100% sure, but at least you have something to start with.
And Lauren, do you think that the people who are using the system currently, franchisors who are not using the kind of data analysis, which in effect leads into business planning. Do you think that's an awareness question at the moment, in terms of, if you like, they're not aware that the system has this facility to do it and enables them to do it? Because obviously, from an operational point of view, this is a very powerful tool for franchisors to use to actually help support, manage, and hopefully motivate the franchisees.
There's part of awareness for sure, because they're not used to it. I mean, franchisors almost never use mapping to do that. Very few of them. Maybe, I mean, the bigger brands, they do, and they've been doing this for years. They have lots of data, but I would say the smaller ones are not used to it. So there is a need, awareness, need for tooling. They need easy to use tools. Some tools may be a bit complex to do that kind of things. That's what we're trying to do. It's not perfect, I think, yet, but it's already. I think it's already accessible for most franchisors. I think it's mainly awareness. I think you're right. Yeah. And I'm trying. That's what I'm trying to do today. Exactly what I'm trying to do.
We need to get your existing users to watch this video, Lauren, so that they can see the recording, so that they can see the benefits of it. Definitely. Chris, I'll come to you in a sec. Simon, you've got your hand up.
Yeah. It's just a quick one, obviously, and I put in the chat around data global. But I mean, what exciting plans have you got for the future in terms of developing? So at the moment, are you using real-time data, real-time system-wide data, or is it's all retrospective? It's all looking back. Is real-time an area you're looking to move into, for example?
It's not on the roadmap. No. Most of the interesting data is either demographics. Doesn't exist in real time, and in some countries it's every year. Unfortunately, in the UK, it's every 10 years. So it's not really real time. Points of interest could be more, I would say, updated more often. In real time, the other type of data you could have is mainly footfall data and traffic data. Can be in real time. Not sure it's really useful for franchisors to have real time data like right now. I'm not sure about the use case yet, so it's not in the plan today, and probably would be incredibly expensive, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, it's out there, of course it is. And you're thinking of using it to, from a marketing perspective and stuff like that. But no, it's really interesting. So, in terms of the UK marketplace and its level of sophistication, we've got some way to go, have we? Which global market is leading the way? Which global franchise market would you say is ahead of the curve in terms of how they use data and mapping?
The US probably.
Yeah.
We also operate in the US. We work with around 100 brands, but and they have I think some of them have a bit more advanced usage.
And do they have something like the ONS surveys in the US as well by state?
Yeah, it's the amount of data in the US is amazing.
Okay.
It's amazing. Like in the UK, you have maybe I don't remember, maybe 100 data points or something. They have thousands, and they have data that that is not. It's surprising for us in France, for sure.
Yeah.
Like skin color and religion, stuff like that. You have everything. It's incredible, and it's updated every year. So there's much more data that you can have in the UK.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Chris, in terms of your franchisor views and looking at this, for your
I'd love to take Poppies to the US just to get access to the data based on what Lauren says, because the maid services over there, and they talk about maid services, that's their generic term, but they quote addresses based on the data that's available publicly. So you can work out this is a 3.5 bath house with 2,400 square feet and 2 living spaces, and almost, about the floor treatments, and all that data is publicly available. So you can quote on that basis almost automatically. But you can also find out, almost precisely, almost to door numbers, what the household income is.
Uh,
Certainly, with so much more accuracy than you get in the UK. So the targeting of direct mail or more, door drops, etc., is so accurate that you can almost say, well, I've dropped 5 houses, one of those will become a client. So
and,
we'd love that to happen. Lauren,
Yeah.
there's your challenge. I guess it's
Well,
government lobbying, etc. But
coming back to the
Not a
day
problem.
job, coming back to the day job in the UK, Chris, in terms of
coming
you.
back to the day job in the UK, we've we've struggled to get the raw data together, to be honest, to be able to run it through the Smappen service. But that's something that's on our roadmap for the next few months. To be honest, we're gonna capture as much as we can, and try and derive as much value as we can from the Smappen product that we subscribe to every month. So
Right. And is
watch
that
out, Lauren. I'll be on your phone. I'll be in your inbox soon.
yeah, well, that's an interesting conversation.
It's not a question of awareness. Then sometimes it's just gathering the data is maybe not always that, and making it clean also is sometimes requires some work.
Yeah, it's interesting when you're looking at average customer spend. It's not already in a report that's available in our system, so we need to pull it out of account and relate that back to. It's just turned into a bit of a complicated issue, and we can't get the report generated that we need to because we don't have the tools to do that. So within the system that we use,
Okay.
so that
It's something that you're working on, Chris.
we are definitely working on it. Yeah, we'd love to be able to. As Lauren said, to give somebody empirical confidence in their territory and a sense that where they are in the world and where they are in the rankings, in terms of their level of penetration in a territory, I think is absolutely critical to this. Franchisees always want big territories at the outset, and then if they're granted, which is a mistake, but if they are granted, they very quickly realise that they're not going to use all those areas. Even in our modest territories, people say, well, I don't go to Cheadle-Hulme and I do Cheadle-Heath, or, well, why? Well, it's a bit awkward because there's a zebra crossing or whatever it is.
That's interesting, Chris, because the argument would be that should be the first thing that you do even before you franchise. But obviously, there are a lot of franchisors that are more mature, if you like, and have to go back and retrospectively look at their individual territories. But I guess for me, if you were starting now, then obviously you can have a look at that. But in terms of data and data ownership, and Natalia has already alluded to this, but are we saying that really it's in the interest of the franchisor to make sure that they own the data? They have to take ownership of the data.
I would say so, and our legals have always done that. The clients are Poppy's clients, effectively. They're serviced by a licensed branch, but they are Poppy's clients, so they revert to us. So all the data, and when we introduced GDPR into the franchise agreements in, what was it, 2017, 2018, around about that was implementation. Again, that's reflected in that that we have the rights to use all that data, that we own it, and
okay. So in theory, then you could actually survey your franchise. You could mystery shop your franchisees by reaching out to their customers directly.
We could, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, they're our customers.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good way of finding out how a franchisee's doing in terms of their. I mean, it might rub your franchisees up the wrong way, but the principle's there, isn't it?
Yeah, that's internal politics, isn't it?
But this is a provision that we do often see. I'm sure Kat will agree. The ability to contact franchisees' customers, is typically reserved for the franchisor in the franchise agreement. And I know this is not a data protection session, so I don't want to take over.
No, it's important, though, isn't it? Yeah, it's important.
The only thing I would say is I think franchisors need to really sort of have a think about how they want to go about this, because I know that many franchisors want to own client data and clients and sort of say, clients are our clients, but not very many are prepared to invest in proper processes and procedures around data protection compliance to actually fully reflect the fact that that is the case and to be fully compliant with the legislation, because it is actually, you do need to put a lot in place, and for some industries obviously more than for others. And I think what I often see is sort of, on the one hand, the franchisors want to say, yeah, they're our clients, but on the other hand, they don't want to deal with the data protection implications. I want to push that to the franchisees and kind of go,
I
yeah,
think
you just
we've got to
comply
push it
with
to
the
the
law.
system providers, really, rather than
Yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it? It's quite a challenging one. I never really thought about it, but because then if you own your customers' data, then you could therefore assume that if they can claim against you as the owner of the data, and then your franchisees could be treated as an employee. So there could be
No,
liability in that respect.
that's not where I was going. I was going
Yeah.
that more that if you're saying we own, clients are our clients, I mean that would have a knock-on effect on how do who is contracting with whom, what does that look like, is the contracting process correct? But also if you're saying, we own client data, then you would be data controller under the data protection legislation. Potentially your franchisees become data processors. You need to have the right the right setup in place to reflect that, and
You
to
need
make
a
sure
lawyer,
that
basically.
you're in the clear. So it gets complicated sort of the more you sort of get into it, but it needs to be done correctly.
But data as an issue is becoming increasingly more significant in franchise operations.
But a lot of it is not personal data. So again, I would just sort of say you need to be careful what data we're talking about, because you can do a lot of with aggregated data, with anonymized data. There is so much you can do. Research and development is usually done with non-personal data. So
yeah. I mean, again, it depends where
you could see. Sorry.
No, after you go on.
That's what you could see in the presentation at the beginning. All of that data was anonymized, and obviously part of that was because obviously he doesn't want to share it with us. But all the data and the results, everything you got, it didn't matter that it didn't have someone's name, matter that it didn't have the house number. It was there's so much that can be done that's anonymized, and therefore it's okay.
Yeah, very true. You can just go by using postcodes, it's enough. And especially in the UK, the postcodes, unlike other, like in the US, the postcodes are very granular, very small. So it's not the address, but it's close to the address sometimes.
Close enough, but it's not private.
But
it's not personal.
So you can just use postcodes without names, without anything, that's enough. Address is a bit more tricky. If you have the address, even if it's anonymized, it's not so anonymized, but I think postcode is enough. Yeah.
And again, that goes back to the way the system's set up in the first place, because we see people coming to us and they might only have a small number of existing branches, or they might already have a couple of pilot franchisees. And what they've done is they've set up the same system 3 times. So they'll have the same CRM system, but it's almost like they're running next to each other rather than running in conjunction. And obviously that's not going to work in terms of consolidating everything. So the best way that I always describe it is the franchisor's central system becomes a plug and play, as in you come in, plug in, we've got everything that you need, and then you go off. And
that's in an ideal world, but unfortunately it's not the case in most of the networks.
Laurent, is franchising the only sector you work in, or do you have other industry sector?
No, franchise is for 40% of our customer base. So it's the biggest segment. We have 20% other kinds of networks. They're not franchising, they're company-owned networks. And the rest is like any kind of business or consultancy companies. And
so when would a non-franchise business use you for mapping, for example?
For location analysis, assessing the potential before opening. Even if they don't have they don't have territories, but even if they don't have territories, they need to assess potential before making any new investment.
Yeah,
but we also have marketing use cases, for sales use cases, for sales teams, sales territories, and so on. So there are many other use cases.
Okay.
But our main focus is franchisors. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think what we've seen today is a really good management tool for a franchisor, and it's moving on to the session for next month. So we're actually following on from that in terms of the whole session is going to be looking at franchise valuations and how much, from a franchisor's point of view, is your franchise network worth, how much is franchisees' businesses worth individually, and how to use capital values to drive franchisee performance. And we've got an invited guest who's a specialist in the field who's going to be looking at some options and tools to do that. So that's the March event. And as always, we'd ask you to scan the barcode if you've got your phones at the ready to leave feedback on today's session using the Gather system that we also use, which will take about 10 seconds. And I'll leave that up just for a couple of seconds to enable everyone to do that. And then if we have any other questions from the floor, if we have any burning questions, otherwise, thank you all for attending, and we'll look forward to the March event.